Hi fellow artists, my name is Lauren. I am the artist behind Potato Art Studios, and in today's video I will be going over my favorite colored pencils from my favorite brands and showing you the colors and why I like them. So if you're interested in hearing about what I have to say about Prismacolor, Faber-Castell, and Caran, just keep on watching. So the first color pencil brand I'm going to go over is Prismacolor, and Prismacolor is the brand I think you can find most commonly in art supply stores like Michael's and Hobby Lobby, so it's the most easily accessible brand. And the Prismacolor pencils that I have the large 120 color set, and of those 120 colors I have just a handful of favorites. So the first color I want to show you is Ginger Root. So Ginger Root is just it's a very light yellow. I'll give you a color swatch here. So it actually kind of looks like ginger, sort of. And this color is really nice to brighten up areas. So I typically use this color for when I'm drawing animals with light fur, like a light tan or white. Instead of, just using white to color the fur, I will try and incorporate this ginger root color, and the yellow in the color actually helps to brighten up the fur and make it look a little less dull. So I often use this ginger root color in animals that have light fur, and you can see how much I've used about half of the length so far. So I do really like this pencil, and I do have a backup of this pencil. The next Prismacolor pencil I want to mention is Jade Green, and Jade Green is a sort of subdued light teal color, and I like to use this color for basically to add some visual interest in an animal. So for example, with a black lab that would have a black coat and maybe a couple of highlights on its fur, instead of just using a black pencil and a white pencil, I'll try and incorporate some color into the highlights so its fur looks a little bit more interesting. So this has been one of my favorite colors to do that, and I'll also mention a color similar to this in the Faber-Castell Polychromos line that I also like to use interchangeably. So this is Jade Green. The next color is a kind of boring color. It's called Sandbar Brown, and you might be thinking, what's so special about this brown? And yes, it's a boring brown, but it's actually very hard to find this specific tone of brown. It's a medium leaning towards the cool end of the brown spectrum, and a lot of animals actually have this color in their fur, but it's very hard to find this specific color. With the Faber-Castell and Caran pencils I own, nothing actually quite matches up with this specific brown. So even though I have about a dozen browns, I always reach for this brown for some reason. So here is a swatch of the Sandbar Brown. The next two colors are kind of a rosy colors that are off red and off pink. So the darker color is called Chestnut, and the lighter color is called Beige Sienna, and these are also very muted colors. I would say I most often use them for noses and mouths. So for animals, it's actually very hard to specifically pinpoint a color on a tongue or a nose. For some reason, the colors on a tongue and nose, they're not bright red or bright pink. It's much more muted. So these two colors I find often work very well for a lot of pet portraits. And show you Chestnut. and Beige Sienna. So the next batch of color pencils I want to talk about are the Faber-Castell Polychromos line, and I would say I have about a little over half of the total line of pencils. And the reason why I don't own all of them is just because I typically don't reach for certain colors, so I know that if I bought a set, the complete set, I wouldn't use 20% of it. So I have bought each pencil individually open stock, and I really enjoy Faber-Castell pencils in general. So of my Polychromos pencils, I do want to mention Earth Green. So Earth Green is very similar to Jade Green, so I'll give you a swatch right here. So at a glance, Earth Green and Jade Green do look very, very similar. Jade Green is a little bit towards the bluer end, and Earth Green is a little bit towards the greener end. But in terms of saturation, they're about the same level, it's just that they have slightly different hues. So I use Earth Green in a very similar way to how I would use Jade Green. The next color is olive green yellowish, and yes, it's actually called olive green yellowish. The ish is at the end. And this is a really nice deep green. So olive greens are, and I'll show you another color right after this, but I like to use green dark colors to deepen up areas that are in shadow. So instead of using a black or dark gray to darken an area, I like to use actual colors. So for example, an area in shadow under a dog's chin or its nose, or like in a crevice of an ear, instead of using black or gray, I like to use a richer dark color. So olive green is one of those colors I tend to reach for. So this is olive green. The next color is dark indigo, and dark indigo is used very similarly to the olive green I mentioned. I use it to darken up an area in shadow. This blue, if you're not familiar with color theory, colors that are opposite of each other in the color wheel tend to neutralize each other. So the opposite color of blue would be an orange. So when I'm using, I would say if I'm drawing a brown orange dog, for example, and I want to create an area of shadow, I'll actually use a blue for the shadow, because the blue will neutralize the yellow and red tones in the existing fur and actually create a darker color. So it's just a little bit of color theory for you, but this color is very, very nice, very rich, and it creates very deep tones when you mix it in that way. And the last color I want to mention is the burnt ochre, and this is a nice color to use in animals that have brown fur, because brown tends to be on its own quite dull. So for the highlighted areas, I will use this burnt ochre color, and also I'll most likely pull in the ginger root color, the Prismacolor I mentioned earlier, and these will help create the color variations in the fur that will make it look more interesting. So this is burnt ochre. So the last brand I want to cover is Caran and their Luminance line. So if you're not familiar with price points of color pencils, I would say an average color pencil brand, it's maybe $1 to $2 a pencil, but the Caran pencils and the Caran line in general is very, very pricey. So the price of one Caran pencil would be equivalent to actually probably owning around 4 Prismacolors or 2.5 Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils, so these are very pricey, and although the quality is very good, I wouldn't recommend you to just invest in the entire set, because that will set you back easily a couple $100s. So I personally only own about a dozen Luminance pencils just because they are quite pricey, but I do enjoy all of the Luminance pencils that I do own, so I'm not saying don't buy them, but if you do, I would try them out first before investing in an entire set. So going into my favorite Luminance pencils, the first one I want to mention is this gray violet color, and this color is very, very subtle. It's a very, very neutral gray color, and I like to use this color just to, I like to use it in small spaces, and I don't apply a lot of pressure with this color. I will kind of use it like a glazing technique to just lightly color over an area to slightly tint it. So I probably wouldn't go through this pencil very quickly, but I use it in a lot of drawings. So this is the violet gray. If you do decide to purchase the Luminance pencils from Caran, I would say your first purchase should include the white and the black, and the reason is because their white and black are very, very good. So I have gone through two full Luminance blacks, and I've gone through at least one Luminance white, and the black for some reason is much more saturated than any other black I've ever tried, and the white layers on top of other pencils very, very well and in a very opaque way. So these two pencils, I've definitely used these two the most out of all my pencils that I own, and I do actually have backups of both of these colors. So this is the black. And this is the white. It's hard to see the white, but if I layer, let's say the white, it's kind of showing up. But the white and the black are definitely standouts from the Luminance line if you're looking into purchasing a white and a black. So here is the complete list of all the colors that I recommend from each brand. As you can see, all of these colors are more on the neutral end. They're not the really saturated red, yellow, greens. They're more subtle colors, and when you're working with animal portraits, you're typically not drawing a bright red dog like Clifford. You're probably, drawing a brown dog, so in that case you would use the Sandbar Brown, olive green, burnt ochre. If you're drawing a white dog, you'd probably be using ginger root, earth green, white, maybe a little bit of violet gray. So you're typically, when you're drawing portraits of animals, you're using a lot more subtle colors. So in that case, I enjoy all of these colors for that reason. They are desaturated but still very pigmented. They play with each other very nicely. I've mentioned it before, but I use Gamsol to blend some of my pencils in a lot of cases when I draw portraits, and a lot of these colors blend together nicely and layer on top of each other very nicely. So if you're looking into investing some money in color pencils, you can buy all three of these brands open stock, which means you can buy the pencil individually, and I will leave a link down below in the description box that will show you my favorite places where I typically buy my art supplies and where the most affordable prices are at. So if you're looking to save some money, I'll specifically list which websites are the cheapest to buy from. So thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. So if the video isn't up already, I will have a video linked in the cards or down below of the pencils that I actually use most often, and so you can check that video out as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.